Recording will start soon. Okay, there we go. All right. This won't take but a second because they're pretty straightforward, I think. Um, 3 types of capillaries. So that's just right off the slide. Describe, just if you said something, I haven't got a chance to grade most of these yet. And then there's 2 that came back again. Describe the cardiac cycle. So number 2 came back again. Wait, a few more people coming.
I can't turn my mic off. I don't know what I did. I did something.
Probably not too far where you hang up. I wonder if I can mute people. I think I can.
I think you can. I don't know.
I know in Zoom I can.
I hit something and I changed my format, the way it looks.
Oh, I can do it. Watch.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, I just muted you. How you doing? The whole class by text. So number 2, that was a repeat. 3, like I told you, I was going to put that on there, and I believe I even said that. Like I used the same terminology, right? So you didn't put like interstitial fluid osmotic pressure, but then some of you described it. So then, so far, like I've been okay with that. Because you understand the pressures that are driving it. The name, it's called blood colloid osmotic pressure, but they've got other names for the same process. So the important thing was that you understood it, right? So it's albumin in the interstitial fluid. That was kind of drawing out water. Really, what you're doing is you're creating. It's a hypertonic versus a hypotonic environment, right? So those are terms from biology: hypertonic, hypotonic, and isotonic, right? And so whenever you have more solute versus less solute, there are terms that you use in comparison. So if there's more albumin outside of the capillary and less albumin inside the capillary is hypotonic, outside the capillary hypertonic. Right? If they were equal, it would be isotonic. Right? So you see like IV bags, they're often the standard one that's like 0.9%. They're isotonic, right? So you want to keep the exact same amount of sodium chloride that you have in your blood, right? But in this case, interstitial fluid osmotic pressure, you're creating a hypertonic environment in the interstitial fluid. Blood colloid osmotic pressure, you're creating a hypertonic, meaning more solute, hypertonic environment in the blood. And either way, water always moves to hypertonic. So, and then what causes depolarization and repolarization? That was the sodium. Sodium rushing in causes depolarization. You didn't have to talk about calcium because the question is what causes depolarization and repolarization. So sodium rushes in, potassium rushes out of the cell. That causes repolarization. If you talked about the plateau from the slide, that's totally fine. But I just kind of wanted you to get it in your head the importance that sodium and potassium play in your body. Sodium's not just about like retaining water, right? So, I mean, sodium and potassium are very important for any kind of electrical impulse in our body, and including our nerves. And okay, so explain the factors contributing to resistance. So that was the length of the blood vessel. So the more blood vessel you have, the more resistance. The lumen, as the lumen gets smaller, the resistance goes up, and viscosity. So that's right off the slide. I asked you here to explain 3 different types of shock. There was 4 from the slide. I didn't want you to just put it. I wanted you to say something as simple as, for example, cardiogenic. You have poor heart function. I know you're thinking, well, that's what cardiogenic is. Like, that's stupid. Why should I put poor heart function? Because a lot of students just literally memorize cardiogenic and they don't even know what it means. And because people don't even take the time to think, okay, cardio, that means heart. Genic, like, what does genic mean? Okay, so it's generated with the heart, or it begins, the genesis, the beginning is from the heart, right? So it's you have a bad heart function. So anyway, cardiogenic, obstructive, vascular, and whatever hypovolemic, right? Low blood volume. So just as simple as that. That was all I was looking for. Not really detailed explanations. And then part 2, which I hope you guys, some of you didn't address part 2, describe some ways our body can respond to hypoperfusion. Again, it's kind of a general question there. So technically didn't talk about hormones, but you just talked about vasoconstriction, and conserving water. That probably would be okay, because that's how your body respond. Oh, and raising heart rate, that would be another way that you could answer that, right? Or you could talk about the hormones, angiotensin 2. I mean, ideally, that's what you would have done. Angiotensin 2, aldosterone, epinephrine, so ADH, right? Describe how the body can control heart rate. Please include the neurological and chemical components. The neurological, I'm just saying that, maybe some mention of the vagus nerve, and some mention of, just directly controlling the heart rate, the receptors, baroreceptors and chemoreceptors. I think I might have asked this on the quiz. And then the chemical components, you just think about what chemicals raise heart rate. Well, definitely epinephrine. And then we have sodium, potassium, and calcium, right? Even though you have those 3 with the action potential, but that's, again, I keep saying it, that's one job that they have. The second job is that they can act like a hormone and influence heart rate. So they make the action potential, they make that spark in the heart, but they also can act as a hormone. Blood pressure being taken, the systolic is the pressure on the blood vessel, on the artery when the heart's contracting. Diastolic is the pressure on the vessel when the heart is relaxing. That's all I'm looking for on that. Starting with the pacemaker, list the parts of the conduction system. It's the SA node, NA node, bundle of His, the bundle branches, the Purkinje fibers. That's it. That was just kind of listing out those 5 things. What are the other names for elastic and muscular arteries? Well, those are conducting and distributing arteries. And they're different in that their location, right? So the elastic arteries are closer to the heart, muscular further away. And as the name implies, elastic has a thicker tunica media. Like the tunica media has a thicker layer of elastic in elastic arteries, and then in muscular arteries, the muscular layer of the tunica media is thicker. Did anybody have any questions on that? Feel like the grades are going to be okay. For those of you, there were a couple of people that were not able to get. They had a tough time negotiating this proctor thing, Proctorio. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a dummy exam with unlimited attempts, so you can just test it out. So I'll make it tonight maybe, and I'll just post it for the next test if you want to run it and make sure that like everything's okay, right? So it'll be like a test with unlimited attempts. There'll be nothing in it, but you could just keep doing it just to make sure everything works. So there weren't as many problems this time, but still it was not working for maybe like 5 of you guys. So it's not your fault. I'm not blaming you. And I'll tell you, I used to, I've taken online classes with these proctoring things, and it's, I've had the worst times because like I'm already stressed. Like you're studying your ass off for these things, and then you don't need anything to like come in and I don't know, just mess it up, right? You got like everything perfect, like you have the stuff in your head. You just want to take the test and like put the information, like get the information out of your head, and then you're having problems with your computer. It's like it sucks. So I know.
I was going to say on the proctor test, the first time it made me scan the room twice, but this time it didn't ask me to. After I scanned it the first time, it didn't ask me to scan anymore.
Yeah, that's fine. You know what I'm really actually, let me turn on my light. Hold on. I'm not so much looking for a room scan. This is what I'm really looking for. Like, take your phone, and then this is kind of hard to do. And my camera sucks. You can't even see anything. But like, you're taking your camera, and like, ideally, I'd like to like see like a mirror would work better, right? I just, and not so much for this test, but as we're getting towards the final, I want to make sure that you don't have like paper, like you don't just lay out all the notes. And I know that almost all of you are not doing that, but I know some of you are for sure. And I know some of you have, a few of you, some of you are looking it up on your phones, or you have, wait, hold on me. I know some of you have your phones, or some of you, not most of you, because you could tell, I could tell by the answers, right? So I could tell what comes off the internet, the wording, you could just tell. So, as we get closer to like the final, for sure, I'm going to want to see not so much like the room around you. I'm more interested in like what's around your keyboard and like right next to you. I know it can't be perfect. Okay. So that's the test. I'm going to work on them tonight. Definitely by tomorrow, everything will be graded. I've done a few of them. They've been okay. So, and I hope they are. And you know what? Really, like the proctor thing, it like, I don't know, it makes me feel better. Like when they're all like, when people get all A's, then I like feel really good. But then if it's like all like if it's just an open test, and like, why can't you just look up every answer, right? And then it's just like sucks for morale. I just feel like, what's the purpose? Like, you all aren't learning anything. That's just feelings. Who cares, right? You guys are doing great. So, and I'm telling you, like, these questions, right? Did I not tell you these questions? Like, were any of these like a surprise? If you go over the stuff, the videos, you saw all these questions. In fact, you probably only needed to go over the video from Friday, right? And I went over all of this. I'm not trying to hide all the questions, like not trying to surprise you with stuff. Like if you're just memorizing this stuff, no, how am I going to say it? Like if you're learning this stuff, um, you could say that I'm teaching you to the test, maybe, but also if you actually learn this stuff, then you really are learning the chapter. You're learning like the bulk of it, right? It's there's some small things in there that I didn't talk about from like the book, but like it gives you like a really good background, which you're gonna need once you go into um, whatever program you're going into. 'Cause that's what that's who I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about those of you that are going into programs. Even if you're going to like be a dental hygienist or something, this stuff still comes back. Not with teeth, but they make you take courses on like pathophysiology and if you want to learn how drugs work, this stuff all comes back, right? So you will get it. Let me jump into the next. So this is actually two. I feel like it's two chapters, and a lot of people, a lot of books, they put it into one, lymphatic system. But really, I think it's like two, lymphatic system and immunity. So I feel like there's like a lymphatic system and then there's an immune system. But anyway, your book put it as one. This is the lymphatic system. So you see like where you have blood vessels, you kind of have lymphatic vessels too. So like here's like you have a subclavian vein going around the shoulder, and then you've got veins and arteries going up and down the arm. Same thing with lymphatic vessels, right? And then you've got them going up the neck, and in fact, a lot of these are named after, right? You see this name's called well, actually that's a jugular vein, but they also use similar, like this is called a jugular trunk, right? So they use the same name. So they're going up the neck, they're going around the shoulder. You've got a big thing going down like your thorax and abdomen, kind of like where you'd see the aorta and the vena cava. So it's kind of following where you'd see arteries and veins. But this is lymph. It's different, has different functions. But there is a place where the blood and the lymph kind of join together. So we'll talk about that. So this is what the lymphatic system does. So we have filtration, we have absorption, but more fluid is filtered than reabsorbed. And so it could be up to about 3 liters. So think about like a 2-liter Coke bottle, extra of fluid being in your body, right? If that didn't get drained, you're going to puff up. So that's what lymph does. So I'll go back to this in a second. This is like see right here. So here's your capillary beds, all here in like purple, and all these things are your cells, right? And so in between all of your cells, you have interstitial fluid, right? So you're having more filtration, meaning that more liquid is going outside of these capillaries than are returning to the capillaries. So we have to get all this extra fluid out, and we have to get it back to the blood. So you're looking right here. This is called the lacteal. This is like the beginning of the lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system's not like necessarily like a circular thing like arteries and veins, right? You have arteries going like down your hand and then got veins coming around back up, and then it goes into your heart and then it turns around again. It's like a closed system, right? The lymphatic system starts at these lacteals. So it starts there at like the capillary level, and then it's going to end at the right here at the, so These are the subclavian veins. And if you look right here where my pointer is, and right here on both of these sides, you see that like that little, they're labeling it here thoracic duct, right lymphatic duct. That's where it ends.
I'm
It
not seeing your
starts.
slides. I'm not seeing your slides. I don't know if it's something I did.
Really?
Is anybody else having that?
That's what I'm going to find out in a second. I can see them. No, I think it might be you, Judy.
I know I hit something. I don't know what I did. I might have to go off and come back on and see if it straightens out. Let me do that.
Is anyone else not able to see them?
I don't know what I did.
Oh yeah, let me.
Professor,
Yeah.
what chapter would this be? Because I'm looking at,
Twenty-
I'm in my book.
21 or 22. If you have the actual book that you used from last semester, it's 22.
Got it.
Yeah, don't, you guys moving around during the test, I'm getting off subject here. Don't worry about that. And most of you are talking. You're like this, and you're like, okay, it's like this, and you're like, oh man, it's like this. Fine, that's fine. That's not a big deal. All of you are moving, and all of you are talking, and there's nothing wrong with that. Don't be all nervous, like, you know, or the dog's barking, or your kids running in. Just relax about all that. If you want to go scream at someone in the house to shut up, just do it. It's okay. That's all fine. Man, but some proctoring agencies, they suck at that. They'll stop your test. It's so stressful. How are we supposed to tell our family to shut up? They don't care about us. They're just another hurdle. That's all they are. Okay. I mean that more for you guys. All right. So yeah, lacteal. So yeah, the functions of lymph. It drains. Oh, and you see, I wrote this. This doesn't make any sense like this. Drains excess. That makes all the difference in the world. Drains excess interstitial fluid, not drains excess lymph. Lymph, your lymphatic system, drains the excess interstitial fluid, so that otherwise you'd be swelling. Transports lipids, right? Because fats, you're eating fats. We can't transport all that fat in the bloodstream. That's your blood is water soluble. So, and then there's 4 fat soluble vitamins. And I just wrote them down: A, D, E, and K. Vitamins B and C. B is like a complex. B complex, like B12 and thiamine and niacin, whatever. All the B vitamins are water soluble. Vitamin C, water soluble. The other 4 vitamins, which I wrote here, are lipid soluble, meaning that they hang out in lipids and they're transported by your lymphatic system. And then your lymphatic system is going to be involved in immune responses, which we're going to talk about very soon. So this is like so there's 2 main, the 2 biggest parts. If we were to like make a comparison and say like, if we were to call them arteries, we don't use the word arteries, we'll say duct. There's 2. So there's like 2 big ones. And the biggest one starts down here and like at this bulge. And then I'm following the pointer right now. This is the left thoracic duct, or the left lymphatic duct, or we just call it the thoracic duct. So if you're following my pointer, it's emptying right into the subclavian. So that's the left. Wait, I got to turn my body around. Then I got to touch the left side of my body and say, this is my left hand, Klaus. So that's left. So that's left. And I still fuck it up. Like when I'm doing EKGs, you'll see it like the QRS complex, it's upside down. So like it comes, and then instead of going up like that, it like drops down. I'm like, and I do the same thing. I look at it, I'm like, man, what's up with this person? Like that QRS is all messed up. And I was like, oh, left and right. Left this side, right this side. But you know, with a person like laying down, I do the same thing. I just do my left. So I don't know. Anyway, so that's one. So it starts here at this bulge here, cisterna chyli, and then you follow it up and it drops in right there at the subclavian. And then the other side is just like a little tiny thing, the right.
Professor,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Kind of got thrown off a little bit. Can you tell me the picture of this again?
Yeah, this is just telling you, this is kind of giving you the bulk of the lymphatic system here. And I'm showing you like the biggest part of it. So when you look at the lymphatic system, it starts with a capillary. Then they get a little bit bigger and they're called like lymphatic vessels. And then they get even bigger and there's fewer of them. And those are called trunks. Like you see these arrows right here? These are trunks. Like this is a trunk right here. That's a trunk. And down here, you see like these three things down here. Those are called trunks. And then from the trunks, all those trunks converge into like two different ducts. So I'm going from like smaller to larger. And I'm going from more numerous to less numerous. So the most and the smallest vessel are called lacteals or capillaries, lymphatic capillaries. Then those start to converge into lymphatic vessels. And I'm not showing you any of these here. Then those are all converging into lymphatic trunks. And those are like, you can see 3 of them here. And then you can see one of them here with that arrow. Wherever the arrows are, they're pointing to the trunks. And all the trunks, they all converge into 2 ducts. Left duct, right duct. This is the left duct here. Starting with this big thing and going into the subclavian. The right duct is little. It starts right here where my pointer is, and it just comes up here just like that. So you can see like here, the left duct in green, it drains all of that. So the left duct is draining both the legs and the left arm. The right duct is ultimately draining the head, part of the neck, and the right arm. So here you can't really see it as well. You can see the left duct. It starts right here at my pointer, and it's coming up here. No, you can't really see it. So this is like a better picture. The trunks, I'm not, well, maybe I will. If I run out of questions to put on a quiz, maybe I'll ask you to know what the trunks are, but they're pretty easy. The necks, the one in the neck, jugular, just like the jugular vein. The one here coming from the shoulder, what's this? Well, it's right here. Subclavian vein, subclavian duct. So you have a trunk. Jugular trunk, subclavian trunk. There's the other jugular trunk. There's the other subclavian trunk, like where the green arrows are. This one here is called bronchomediastinal. Broncho meaning lungs. So whenever you see the word broncho, you're thinking something about lungs. Mediastinum is the cavity that the heart fits in. So bronchomediastinal meaning from the thorax, from like the heart lungs area. So like this trunk right here with this arrow, that's one of the bronchomediastinal, and this is like the other one. Then down here, there's lumbar. So lumbar, you're thinking lower back. And then intestinal, lumbar, right? So the intestinal is going to be like your abdomen. And then lumbar is like legs, lower back, legs. I'll turn that into a slide if I ask you. This is just showing you, I don't know. I'm never into these kind of slides because they like really confusing to me. But if we start, like if we try to tie it in with the heart, you have the right atrium, right ventricle, then it goes out to the lungs, and then back in through the left side, left atrium, left ventricle, out through the aorta, then arteries, and then arteries become arterioles, capillaries. So right here, most of that fluid is going to stay in the blood and it's going to come back up the vena cava. Some of that fluid through filtration ends up in the lymphatic system. It ends up in the interstitial fluid, and then the lymphatic system picks it back up. So I'm really going back to like this. Right? So some of the fluid ends up in the interstitial fluid, and it doesn't go back into the blood again. So then the lymphatic system is going to pick it up. And they're like lymphatic vessels, see, then lymphatic trunk, then lymphatic duct, and then it goes right back into the subclavian vein. So it's kind of a circle if we kind of look at it that way. As far as fluid, I'm not talking about blood vessels. I'm not talking about oxygen or carbon dioxide. I'm just talking about water, pretty much, right? Some of that water ends up in the interstitial fluid and it doesn't go back into the blood. So therefore, the lymph picks it up and carries it and drops it back in your shoulders, right in the subclavian veins. So the immune system, the immune part of it. So you have lymph, there's different organs that are also part of the immune system, like the spleen and the thymus. So we're going to talk about a few of them. But first of all, we can take lymphatic organs, and there's two types, primary and secondary, and I've kind of got it labeled here. Primary organs are where stem cells are going to divide and become immunocompetent. So what does that mean? If you go back to the 5 types of white blood cells, that was one of our test questions. It was like neutrophil, lymphocyte, monocyte, those, eosinophils, blah, blah, blah. One of those were special types of white blood cells, lymphocytes. Lymphocytes, they have the ability to become what are called like T cells and B cells, which we're going to talk about those. And why do we call them T and B? That's just where they, so T cells and B cells are like military, right? They're like fighters, right? And so where do they go to boot camp or like basic training? They go in different places. For B cells, they get their basic training in the red bone marrow. So B stands for bone marrow. T cells, although T cells are born in the red bone marrow, that's where they're made, they're going to go up to the thymus, which sits on your heart. They're going to go up to the thymus, and that's where they're going to become T cells. So T stands for thymus, B stands for bone marrow. So those are, that's why you see here it says red bone marrow and thymus. That's where like the boot camp is for these lymphocytes. That's where they become B cells or T cells. So those are kind of like the fighters in your body, in your immune system. Secondary organs, that's where we set the alarms off. Like you always like the doctor like feels your lymph nodes in your neck, right? Because lymph nodes, they set, like when you get infected with something, those can get inflamed. So let me go back. So like, here's the lymph, right? So let's say you had something in your body that shouldn't be there, right? It's gonna often end up in your lymphatic system, right? So it gets picked up by a lymphatic capillary, and then on its way back to your subclavian vein, on its way back to the blood system, it goes through a lymph node. So you can view your lymph nodes as like filters, right? So if anything's in there that doesn't belong, inside the lymph node are a bunch of white blood cells that are looking for stuff. You know, they're looking for that virus. And so if they see a virus, they sound the alarm system. They get your immune system going, right? So a lymph node is like a thing where an immune response happens. How do you know you're infected with something? Well, the lymph nodes. Or there's something else called lymphatic nodules. Or your spleen. So those three, I'm like looking at that comma right there. So your lymphatic nodules, or your lymph nodes, or your spleen, those are organs where they're like alarm systems, right? They set off the immune system. The primary organs are where the B cells and T cells are made. This is all part of, we consider all of this part of the lymphatic system. So, like bone marrow, there's your spleen, there's your thymus on top of your heart. And then you see all these lymph nodes, right? And lymph nodes, there's about 600 lymph nodes in your body. They tend to congregate in your axillary region and your, whatever this region is that I forgot, iliac, whatever. That's one. What is it?
Inguinal.
Yeah, I was about to say not my problem because I got my degrees. But you see, like they congregate in different places up in your whatever neck region. I know Steve was taught that to you last semester. But anyway, they congregate in different parts in your body. So, so there's two types of organs, right? So these are parts of your lymphatic system, technically, like red bone marrow, thymus, lymph nodes, lymphatic nodules. Those lymphatic nodules are kind of like lymph nodes, but they don't have, like lymph nodes have a capsule around them, and lymphatic nodules don't. I haven't really gotten to that yet, but they're similar to lymph nodes. Let me go through a little more and try to talk about. All right, before we get into all this, let me talk about some terms here. We're going to talk about two types of T cells, either today or by the next class, T4, T8. But anyway, they're T cells. And then there's B cells. Those are lymphocytes. Like I was saying, they go to their boot camp and they learn how to become specialized cells. They're white blood cells that become specialized. And then you got microbes, right? Because I kind of use some of these terms interchangeably. I might say it's a pathogen. I might say it's a microbe. You have bacteria in your body, and those are microbes, meaning like, little small things. You have lots of bacteria in your body. It's not pathogenic. Getting E. coli infection, that would be pathogenic. But you have your own E. coli. That's not pathogenic. So in that case, it's not a pathogen. Your own E. coli is not a pathogen. You eating somebody else's E. coli from their rectum, isn't that disgusting? That's why I said rectum. But that's what it was. It was a bacteria. It was in some guy's rectum. It's probably some guy because they're the ones that don't wash their hands. And then they didn't wash their hands. And then they went out and they made your taco, touching your lettuce with their E. coli fingers that they were wiping with. And then you eat it and, now you've got the E. coli. Now it's a pathogen because it's not yours. It's that dude at that place that you went to go eat. And so now it's a pathogen because it'll cause disease, right? So, so there's 5 that I want you to know about. Well, okay, the 2 big ones are going to be viruses and bacteria, right? So when someone's sick, whoever is diagnosing is probably thinking in their head, is it a virus or bacteria, right? And so that's like, I don't know, 95% of the time, something that makes you sick is going to be a virus or a bacteria. If you take microbiology, you're going to be learning about most of the time viruses and bacteria. Right? So, but there's other things. There's fungus. Like athlete's foot, ringworm, thrush. That's something you'll see more in hospitals. That's like an opportunistic type of infection. Um, so people can get fungal infections, and then there's other fungal infections which can get in your lungs, and they could really suck, right? But most of the time, you're not going to see that. You're going to see viruses and bacteria. But fungal infections, that is another pathogen. Protozoa.
Professor,
Yeah,
you speaking about fungi. I kind of had a vision just now.
yeah.
When speaking about fungi, why some people get it and some people don't? I sit in the salons where they get now feet washing, and some use the little plastic and say that's part of not getting bacteria to the feet. How so? How so? Where the difference is when you're not using it and you're not using the plastic to prevent fungi.
What do they do with the plastic?
They stated that that's like a precaution of not getting bacteria to the feet.
Would they like wrap part of your feet in plastic or something?
No, they put it in a bowl.
They put the plastic in the bowl? Is it like saran wrap or something?
The actual tub that you soak your feet in, they will cover it in a plastic wrap.
Oh, like when your
And
feet.
the water will go into the plastic instead of your feet going directly into the foot tub.
Oh.
It's
But your
probably
question about the question you're getting at,
a barrier to separate it from the actual bowl. So it's your own little. It's like your own tub because you got a barrier between you and the tub.
So does that prevent? So that is a way of preventing fungi.
I
Yeah,
would
it's your own germs.
I would guess so. But isn't that like? But doesn't that like mess the point up? Like, so your feet are not in the tub. Exactly. It's like a foot condom. It seems like.
Is that what it is? Is it?
I don't know.
I've never done it, so I don't know what she's talking about.
I'm just when you speak about fungi, I just wanted to give like some emphasis
right.
on that.
You're right. You're exactly right. I keep getting stuck on like the whole
Because
thing.
the reason why I go there because Professor, everything that you teaches is like some things that we actually going through in human life where we have to be careful what we eat and I'm speaking of just in general of different things of how to prevent fungi and bacteria and different things like that. That's why I brought that up.
And there are, so I mean, you're right, and about the feet in particular, you're right, and it's not so much that like what makes the feet different. What makes the feet different is that you're always in like socks and shoes, and it's warm and it's moist, and that's why the bacteria don't necessarily live on. Like, why don't you get fungus on your hands, but you can get it on your feet? Because bacteria really need a nice humid environment, right? And so yeah, if you have it on your feet, and yeah, they're trying to keep you from getting it.
I remember one time a podiatrist saying that he would get his diabetics to spray deodorant on their toes and their feet to keep them dry.
Oh yeah, and for diabetics, definitely for diabetics, that's even more of an issue. Or if you have any kind of like anything that compromises you, fungus loves to come out. Then they'll do something. Right? That's usually when you see it, when you have something else. Or anyone with like a weakened immune system. Protozoa is like malaria. We don't have that here. I think chlamydia is a I think chlamydia is a protozoa. Now I want to ask hey Siri. This is all getting recorded too. What is chlamydia? Or is it a bacteria?
Chlamydia, or more specifically a chlamydia infection, is a sexually transmitted
bacteria.
infection caused by the bacteria.
No, I don't want to do anything else. All right, so I guess that's not. But protozoa, that's another type of pathogen that, and I can't think of any good examples in the U.S. because we don't have malaria here. And then there's other parasites like
How about
There's
that brain eating amoeba? Would that be a protozoa?
amoeba. Yeah,
Yeah.
amoeba would be, well, amoeba would,
Pots, the neti pots that people use, and they don't clean it with good water, and they can get you can eat to the brain.
yeah, that I would put in the parasite category. Because
Okay.
they're like, they're these things we call protists. Like protists are just like a group of little small microscopic things that are like general, like amoeba and paramecium and giardia. Um,
Jordan.
and then we have worms like hookworm. In Louisiana, you have hookworm and pinworm. Like little kids will get pinworms, like little white worms. Um, hookworms you can get through the feet. Mostly you can get it like eating food, but again, in this country, we really don't. It's not like a big thing, right? I've gotten it in other countries, eating street food and stuff. Just have these worms living. They like to live in your
It's the track.
your GI tract. Yeah, they like to live in your duodenum. So, I got them one time, one summer, and I left them in me for like till like December or January because I was losing a little bit of weight, so I was like, oh man, this is pretty good. So I just left them in. And then antigen. Antigens are, so that's another term, antigens. Your body doesn't fight. Your body's not really fighting like a bacteria. Your body's fighting a piece of a protein that's on the wall of the bacteria or the virus, right? Trying to figure out how to get coronavirus. It's not looking for the actual virus. They're trying to figure out, like they're trying to get a particular protein and try. It's like a piece. It's like a name tag, right? Most all cells have like these name tags on it, and that's really what the body goes after, and that's what our immune system goes after. It's constantly looking at name tags of stuff, right? So, all right, I'll get into it. I should have just read what I wrote here. You know, it's that particular protein that is setting your immune system off. That's part of the idea behind immunizations, right? One type of immunization is just to take the protein from the pathogen and inject that into you. Then your body's going to get a little bit sick. You're going to provoke the immune response. But if you actually got infected with the real pathogen, then your body's already set up. You've already been exposed to it and you've already made antibodies against it, but it's not actually the bacteria or the virus. You're just taking the antigens from the virus. All right. This is the thymus. So I'm kind of getting into a couple of the lymphatic organs. So there's the thymus sitting on top of your heart, but the heart's missing here. This is a slide of it. So when you look at these slides, and I wish we could look at some of them in lab, but we don't have lab. You see like a darker region and a lighter region. That is all the that all has to do with lymphocytes. So lymphocytes are like cells with a big round dark nucleus in it, and so you're just seeing a whole bunch of them. Like they're kind of showing them here, all these dark circles here. You're looking at a nucleus of a lymphocyte, right? And so when you find a whole bunch of them crowded together, that's why it's like darker. But anyway, this is the thymus. This is where T cells mature. So lymphocytes are made in the red bone marrow. Some of these lymphocytes are going to go to the thymus, and there they become T cells. And inside the thymus, you find different things. You find obviously T cells because that's where they're made. You find dendritic cells. We're going to get to that, not today, but these are called antigen presenting cells. So we'll talk about that. But dendritic cells or dendrites, and macrophages, which are cells that like eat other things, right? So that's all part of your immune system, and we're going to get into that. So for now, just that's what's in the thymus. And then here's lymph nodes. Like I was calling it like the filter, right? And you can see what's inside a lymph node. And so the lymph comes in on this side with something called an afferent vessel, and it leaves through an efferent vessel. So you'll see that name a few times, not just with lymph nodes, but like the spleen, for example, or even like your kidneys. We talk about these words afferent and efferent. So things coming in and things going out. I remember it that A comes before E, or I just say that E stands for exit, right? So the efferent vessel is where the lymph exits. The afferent is where it goes in. So this is the filter, right? And in here, you can see what's hanging out in here. T cells, B cells. We haven't talked about any of these yet, but dendritic cells, dendrites, and macrophages. And we'll talk about those next class, but I was just, they're all immune system cells. So if you have a virus or bacteria in your lymph, then the lymph's going to flow inside. That's going to trigger this lymph node. And this is just a slide of it. I'm going to skip it. Here's your spleen. Your spleen eats up worn out red blood cells, but also, since all those red blood cells are going in there, and it's also looking around, there's also lymph going in there, and it's also looking around for anything that doesn't belong. So it's kind of like a lymph node as well. I mean, it serves the same function. And that's all I'm going to say about the spleen. Lymphatic nodules are similar to lymph nodes. So if I go back to a lymph node, I'm really not giving you. When you look at the anatomy of some of our vessels, and I think we might have talked about this with the adrenal gland, you had a capsule going around, then a cortex, and then a medulla. So this is the same setup. This is the medulla, this is cortex, and then this is the capsule on the outside. So lymphatic nodules are kind of like lymph nodes, but they don't have a capsule. You find them just under the epithelial tissue. So if I take the inside of my cheek and I grab it with my fingers, I'm holding on to epithelial tissue, right? Right underneath that are lymphatic nodules. Or if I take my esophagus, or, like it's saying here, respiratory, urinary tracts, all your tracts, all the holes and tubes that go into your body, there's right underneath the epithelial tissue, there's lymphatic nodules, right? And so there's lots of macrophages in there, like phagocytes. Phagocytes are cells that eat things. Sometimes we call them MALT, mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue, and we'll talk about that next class. Or in the case of your guts, we call it gastro something associated lymphatic tissue, right? So, you eat a piece of food with bacteria and it goes into your stomach and it somehow clings to your stomach wall and it burrows into the wall of your stomach, the epithelial tissue. Right underneath that, hopefully, we've got some lymphatic nodules nearby. Forgot to erase that. All right, because I already see I've used up the whole class. I didn't really get into immunity yet, but I'm going to start immunity next class. And this is pretty much how you, immunity is defined as, most books will define it as self versus non-self. So your body knows what belongs to you because it has name tags. All my cells have name tags saying Klaus, right? So any cell that has a different name tag, I'm going to go kill it. That's it. It's that simple. Self versus non-self. But then within that, we have two different types of defenses, general and specific. So right now, I'm like, did something that I should never do. I'd lick the dirtiest thing that's in my life. Would have been better if I went to the toilet and like licked the toilet seat. But I just stuck my tongue on the phone. Probably a good chance I'm going to get COVID-19. But for sure, definitely what I know is that I've just licked a bunch of bacteria and probably some viruses. And who knows what else I just licked. It's right now what's happening is that I've got some cells that are going to try to eat it. It's going to go into my stomach when I swallow, and my stomach's acidic. That's going to kill it. That's all general immunity. It's not a specific, I'm not going after a specific thing. It's just general. Later on, I'm going to eat some food, and it's going to have some bacteria in it. That's going to be general. And then later on, I'm going to breathe in some like dust mites from my pillow or pollen. That's all general. But let's say I had like coronavirus on this, right? And then the coronavirus now is going to start going into my cells and it's going to start replicating. So by midnight tonight, I'm going to have like 1 million coronaviruses in me. That's different. That's specific immunity. That's not just like taking out a worm egg here, taking out a piece of bacteria there, general things. No, the coronavirus is going nuts in me right now, and I'm going to have hundreds of millions in a couple of days if I don't try to do something. So now I have to design a special army that is just for that one virus. And then what if I get the flu? I've already got my immune system going, right? No, I got to start over again. If I get regular influenza, I got to start the whole thing over again. I got to make a whole new army to go after that. See, so it's like definitely not general. It's very good at taking out one problem, one really bad problem. That's your specific immunity or adapted immunity. General immunity is good at taking out everything, but small amounts. I could take out, if I breathe in some pollen when I walk outside, I'm fine. That's general, right? So that's the difference. That's what we're going to talk about next class on Wednesday. Does anyone have any questions? You don't have to have questions. Sometimes I just talk. All right, I stopped presenting, right? All right, let me stop recording.
I'm still recording.